Hello everybody and welcome to our June installment of the Digital Dealer Exclusives Mystery Quilt with Kimberbell and Material Girls. Are we ready? If you remember, last month we worked on our pinwheel block, and this was our hint that we had that was going to be our block for the month of June. We are going to get started. Are you ready to see what you're going to be working with this month? Here is our block. We're going to be making some flowers. We're going to make 2 of them. The hoop size that's marked here says 5 by 7. This is only if you are not quilting in the hoop will this fit into the Bernina large oval. If you are quilting in the hoop, you are going to need the maxi hoop in order to be able to accommodate the 5 by 7 embroidery design and the 6 by 8 background quilting that is required for this project. We are going to use the poly mesh in our hoop if you are quilting in the hoop prior to the embroidery. If you are only doing the embroidery, you will need the medium weight cutaway. We will need to apply fusible woven backing to the wrong side of both of our background pieces, and I am going to recommend that you apply it to both of the white pieces that you need, just to provide a little bit more of a background blocker to the white flowers that we have right here. Okay, just so that we can better keep this portion of the pink kind of showing through our white, I would go ahead and apply some fusible backing to the wrong side of those white squares, and that will be it. It will be completely optional if you want to put it on the green. They have digitized this in a manner that the stem is not underneath of these particular petals right here. But you can see a little bit of the pink here in the photograph, and you'll see in a moment in my finished example, I did not apply fusible backing to the back of the yellow, so I'll let you see what that looks like. These are our thread colors that we're going to need, so you can relate that back to the color chart for our colors. Our background quilting is going to be the cream color. This month, setting up our block is pretty much what we have been doing in the past. We have the Spring 6 by 8 design is the design we're going to be using for this month. And we do have some special alignment that we need to take into consideration when we add the floral embroidery design to our hoop. And I'm going to walk through that here with you right now. So here is my machine. I'm going to go get my design on my USB stick. I have a folder labeled Mystery. I'm going to open up June, and I'm going to pull up my background quilting, Spring 6. I am going to pull up the embroidery files. We are doing block by block quilting with this. I'm going to open up the format that best applies to me, and I'm going to go find the 6 by 8 file. Okay, 10, 12, 14, 6 by 8. I'm going to open that up. Now, I'm going to go ahead and add my embroidery design, or the floral portion of our design, to this. Okay, so I'm going to hit the plus sign. Should bring you back out to where you were. So I'm going to walk backwards here, back out to my main section so that I can open up the embroidery files and my format, and there's my design. Now remember, in the world of Bernina, when we open a design, it drops it into the center of the hoop. Okay? We need to move these flowers down so that the bottom of these flowers line up with the bottom of the quilt design. This is so when we piece this into our project later, we will it'll look like the flowers are growing out of the seam versus floating above. So I'm going to zoom in here. So we see this line here. We want this line right here to be lined up with the very bottom of the quilting design, and that's the box that goes around. So we're going to use our stitch length knob. We're going to turn it counterclockwise so that the design comes straight down. We don't really want to move it from left and right. We just want to move it straight down. So that's why I choose to use my knobs versus touching and dragging on the screen. All right, so I've moved him down so that he lines up with the bottom of that particular seam. And at this point, we are ready to start creating this month's block. I'm going to go ahead and send this over to the machine. I am going to stitch the first color stop of this design, which is going to stitch me a placement line for my batting. Now, with my batting, you have different ways and formats that I have shown you over the last few months on how you can work the batting or do the batting, okay? If you don't want to have to do any trimming of your batting in place, then you will cut your piece of batting 6 by 8 inches. If you are going to If you want to tack your batting down and then trim the excess, you are going to want to cut a 7 by 9 piece of batting. I am going to pre-cut my batting to the exact size so that I can skip the step of having to trim it. So I am going to run the first color stop directly into my hoop, and then I am going to place my fabric on top of it as well. Okay, so we're going to be skipping a bunch of different steps on this design. Okay. If you are not quilting in the hoop, you are going to place your cutaway stabilizer in the embroidery hoop only, and then you're going to follow the instructions in the handout for how to place your design. Okay, so in the design, you're going to stitch the first color stop. It's going to stitch this little tick mark. You are going to line up the center of that design with the center of the tick mark, and then you are going to fold the fabric up 1 inch and align that fold with the bottom of the placement line. And then once you have that line lined up, the fold lined up, you're going to unfold the fabric. Okay, so that it all lays flat in the hoop. And then we will move on with the basting box, which is colored stop 2 for this design. Now again, I am going to specifically demonstrate here today the quilting in the hoop portion. Because if you're not quilting in the hoop, I'm not quite sure why not. Now, let's head on over to the machine, and you will see that I have already placed my placement line for my batting. So that was color stop 1. I have my 6 by 8 piece of batting cut and placed right inside of that tack down. We don't need color stop 2 on this design. So we're going to skip it. Color stop 2 is the basting box or the basting line that would have tacked this down and told you where to trim it. I don't necessarily need color stop 3. Color stop 3 is going to give me a placement line telling me where to put my fabric. I may decide to stitch that, depending on the project, if I had cut my background fabric a little closer to the actual size of the design so that I would make sure that I truly got it centered over top of this. This fabric is way bigger than what we need if you cut it according to the instructions. And then I'm going to skip color stop 3, which would have been that placement line for fabric. I don't need it. And color stop 4 is where I'm going to start. And that's going to basically tack down my fabric so that it holds it in place. So I'm just going to kind of roughly center this over top of my batting, making sure that I have an ample amount top and bottom. Once our background quilting is completed, our next two color stops are going to be related to the design if we were not quilting in the hoop. Okay, so we're going to skip color stop 6. 6 is would be the tick mark that would need to be done. We don't need that. And we're going to skip color stop 7, which is the fabric basting box if you were not quilting in the hoop. Okay, so we don't need either of those color stops, so we can skip them. We're going to start the actual embroidery process with color stop 8. That is going to give us this background placement of some petal fills. Then we're going to switch over to our charcoal thread in color stop 4, and that is going to give us the stamen detail. Color stop 5, we're going to switch out to a light pink and stitch the small petal fill. Okay, so that's going to be color stops 8, 9, and 10 for those that have combined their design. So let's head on back over here. I'm going to change out my thread to the dark pink and then start stitching this portion. Step on our project is going to be placing the glitter sheet into an applique section. So we're going to run the placement line that's going to tell us where to put this. The most important part about using this is to remove the clear plastic piece that is on top of the glitter. Okay, so you want to just separate it and pull this off. It's trash, and this is how we're going to use this section for fabric. Okay, so we're going to run the placement line in the lighter pink thread that's already in your machine. We're then going to place our glitter sheet right side up. So you want to make sure that you have the sparkly side up. We're then going to tack this down and then trim around it, and then we'll cover up the applique fabric in the hoop and set a warm iron on top of that for 15 to 20 seconds to get the glue on the back of the glitter sheet. So this here is a heat activated glue. This will allow us to get this to heat set, or basically applique or fuse in place. Okay, so we're going to run the color stop with our pink thread to tell us where to put this applique fabric. My applique lines are in. I'm going to take my glitter sheet, shiny side up, and I am going to cover all of that placement line. You can use a piece of tape to kind of hold it in place. I am going to use a small piece. It likes to slide. So I just want to, even if I'm holding it, it likes to move around. So we're just going to put a little there. And I am going to run the next color stop in the same pink thread, tack this down, and then we'll take the hoop off the machine and trim the excess. Once you are all trimmed, we're going to take our hoop, put it back on the machine. We're going to run through these 4 color stops. Light pink for the decorative stitch on our trimmed applique, dark pink for dark green for 1 set of stems, light green for a second set, and our leaves, and then back to the dark green for the vein detailing. Now when your vein detailing is complete, we're going to change our machines out to yellow thread. We're going to use this to stitch our placement line and our tack down for our number 4 flower. Okay, so I want to show you. This is the number 4 flower here. This is the one that I would say is optional in order to add the fusible woven to the back side of. You do see a little bit of that pink showing through kind of this background, but not super obvious. So it's up to you if you want to apply fusible backing. I have applied it to the second one that I'm going to do, just so you can see a difference between them. And then we are going to tack that down, trim it, and then run the decorative cover stitch around that design. So here I am back at my machine. I've already run the placement line. I'm going to place this piece of fabric right side up, completely covering all of that placement line, and I'm going to run the tack down. Now that our fabric is tacked in place, I'm going to take my hoop off the machine. I'm not going to take anything out of the hoop, and I'm going to trim the excess fabric as close to the stitching line as I can around this shape. Now, once your flower is trimmed, we are going to go ahead and return the hoop to the machine, and then we're going to run the cover stitch for the outside edge. Don't stress too much about trying to get all the way into those crevices, because most of that is going to be covered with the cover stitch. When your yellow flower is all cover stitched, go ahead and change out to purple and stitch the little flower 5 fill. We are now going to work through appliquing the 2 white fabrics for our daisy flowers. The larger square is for the upper flower and the smaller square is for the lower one. These are done in one color stop, meaning it is not going to stop after it runs the placement line for the first flower for you to place and applique the fabric of the second flower. So they do need to be taped down, or you need to stop the machine when it moves to the second location and then place the fabric. Do not try to just lay these fabrics on top, because they are going to be moved or could get caught by the presser foot when it goes to move to the location of the second set of stitching. Okay, so we're going to thread our upper thread in cream colored thread or white or off-white, completely up to you as to what you want these fabrics to be appliqued in. Okay, so I'm going to change to the cream. The first one I did in white, and let me show you what it looks like in white, just in case maybe you would rather do it in white. So here's white. I'm going to do the next one, this block, I'm going to go ahead and do in the cream so that you can see the difference between the two. Just thought the first time I did it, it looked a little more like a daisy, and I thought the cream that I had was a little creamy. But we're going to give it a try and see which one. These blocks don't go next to each other in the quilt, so a little bit of variety is just fine. So I'm going to run my placement line, and then I'm going to do my fabric appliques. Now with our fabrics appliqued, we're going to use our scissors and trim all the excess fabric away. We're going to return this design or this hoop to the machine, and we are going to work through the final steps of our design. We're going to stitch the cover stitch for the flower 1 and 3, the 2 white flowers we just appliqued. We're then going to change out to our charcoal thread and stitch the center of our yellow flower, back to light pink to stitch some detail in the 2 white flowers, and then yellows to stitch the white flower centers. Now, when your design is finished, you can take your hoop off the machine and you can head over to the cutting table so that we can trim this down. The only thing that you should have remaining in your June kit is this package of rhinestones. Do not do anything with these rhinestones at the moment. Just add them to the bag with the January and March embellishments. These will get added to our design in the last month after we've put it all together. I'm going to head over to the cutting table and I'll meet you over there. If you are not quilting in the hoop, you can use a seam ripper and remove that basting box that is going around your design that we use to hold our background fabric in place. You've quilted in the hoop. We do not have this step to do. We do have a little bit of special trimming instructions that we need to make sure that our stems come down at a point in our trimming to make sure that they will get caught in our seam allowance. So we are going to trim this block up to 6.5 by 8.5. You can use your 6.5 by 8.5 orange pop ruler. The design will be centered horizontally, and then vertically you're going to bring it down so that the stems are lined up at the bottom of the inside of the orange pop ruler or at the bottom of your 6.5 by 8.5. So let's take a look at trimming. Back it up a little bit. Okay, here's my block. Here's my 6.5 by 8.5. I want to make sure that my flower stems are hitting right at the bottom of this block here. Okay. That way, when I get ready to, well, not when I get ready, when I go and sew this in place, those will get caught in the seam and will look like they're growing out of the seam versus floating. I'm going to carefully trim this. Like that, and I have a block. Now, you may be like, Amy, your blocks aren't identical. I am going to show you here in a moment, if you wanted to make your block slightly different, how to mirror image one. It's still the same block. Things are just pointing in the other direction. Since we're making 2 that go in the quilt, why not add a little bit of difference to that second block so that it doesn't look quite as repetitive in our project? You could do this with any of the blocks that we ultimately make 2 of. So let me show you how to do that. I would go through the design and stitch the design the way that you've opened it the first time. When you have finished stitching that design, come back to your edit screen. So that would be, this is where you would be. You would hit the pencil to come back in here. We're going to select the floral design that we have there on the layer section. We're going to touch the I to open up edit. And right inside of here is your mirror image left, right. And if I flip that, it's just going to mirror image my design. So now my flowers are going the other direction. Okay, so just to add a little bit of additional interest to your project, you could easily flip the second one or flip the first one and stitch the second one the other way. Does not matter, but just another way to use some of the editing features in your machine to maybe make the design look a little more like you'd like. That is our block for the month of June. Okay, and we are ready to see a little hint that is related to July. And here we go. I see a lot of green. I see some grass and a lot of green. So who knows what we'll be doing next month, but we are now officially halfway through our mystery quilt. And things are going to start maybe in a month or two coming together and revealing themselves. I want to thank everybody so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed this video, please, we'd love to have a like and a comment, and feel free to subscribe to our channel to be notified and updated whenever we post the next video. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day.